A fisherman's ghost still waits on a platform in Melbourne, vanishing the moment anyone approaches. In London, voices echo through pitch-black tunnels, and a woman in old clothes lingers at the end of a deserted platform. And in India, a station master saw a ghost in white. He and his family were found dead the very next day. These are abandoned train stations with haunted histories. Flinders Street Station in Melbourne is the oldest train station in Australia. It has some interesting stories, especially of the ghostly variety. The most famous one is about a fisherman named Ernest. According to the legend, Ernest used to fish along the Yarra River near the station in the early 1900s. One night, he never came home. His body was eventually found in the river, and ever since, people claim his ghost has been roaming the station. Staff working late shifts have reported seeing a man in old-fashioned fishing gear standing on platform 10, staring blankly like he's waiting for something. When they go to approach him, though, he disappears. Others say he can sometimes be spotted near the station's giant clocks, which have their own eerie reputation because of how often they would mysteriously malfunction. Visitors have also described feeling someone brush past them in empty stairwells or hearing wet, disembodied footsteps. Aldwych Station is one of the most famous abandoned stops on the London Underground. First opened in 1907, but never had enough traffic to really justify it, so by 1994, it was officially closed. Since then, it's mostly been used for filming. If you've ever seen old movies filmed in London with tube scenes, chances are they might have been shot here. The place also has a reputation for being one of the Underground's most haunted stations. People who've been inside say the atmosphere is unnerving from the start, with peeling tiles and dusty escalators and platforms that vanish into pitch-black tunnels. During World War II, the station was used as an air raid shelter and also to store valuable artifacts from the British Museum. Some believe that's where the ghost stories began. Staff and film crews have reported hearing voices echoing down the tunnels when the place is completely empty. A few have even seen a figure of a woman dressed in old clothing standing at the far end of the platform before vanishing. Security guards claim they'll hear doors slamming or footsteps running behind them, only to turn around and find that there's nobody there. And the silence underground just makes every sound 10 times creepier. A lot of people refuse to stay there alone. In the middle of nowhere in West Bengal, there's an old rundown railway station called Begunkodor. Back in 1967, a station master claimed that he saw a woman in a white sari walking along the tracks. A pretty typical sounding ghostly story, but the next day, the station master and his family were found dead in their quarters. People freaked out, and the station was shut down. Trains stopped coming, and the place earned a reputation as one of India's haunted stations. In 2009, the station was reopened. The creepy tales didn't die down. People still reported seeing the woman in white, especially on stormy nights. Some even say they can hear footsteps echoing through the empty platform. Moonville Tunnel sits in the middle of thick forest in southeastern Ohio, part of a ghost town that was abandoned decades ago. The tunnel was built in the 1800s to connect small mining towns, but it became famous for the number of accidents that happened there. The most famous story is about a railroad worker who was crushed by a train while working in the tunnel. Ever since, people claim that his ghost haunts the area. Visitors say if you go near the tunnel after dark, you can hear the sound of an old lantern swinging in the air, like someone walking through the tunnel with it. There are stories of a vanishing shadowy figure, too, and people exploring the tracks have also described sudden drops in temperature. A few will also say they've heard the screech of metal wheels on rails, even though the train stopped running decades ago. The tunnel is narrow and dark, with crumbling brick walls, so it's easy to see why the ghost stories have stuck around. Most people, the wise ones anyway, avoid it completely at night. Gollanfield Junction railway station sits in the Scottish Highlands. It has quite the history. Back in 1953, there was a deadly train collision here. The station was closed soon after. People say that the night air around the old track still carries the echoes of that accident. People will report hearing phantom train whistles and clanging metal as if a train is moving through the station, even though none have run in decades. Some claim to see shadowy figures near the platforms. The old station buildings are falling apart with broken windows and doors that swing open in the wind, but sometimes they're said to slam shut on their own. People who've explored the site at night say the place has a heavy, unsettling atmosphere, like the station is holding on to that tragedy. Even folks who lived nearby all their lives give the area a wide berth after dark. Utterby Halt is a tiny abandoned railway stop in Lincolnshire, England, that's famous, or rather infamous, for a dark tragedy. Back in 1953, a railway worker named John Edward Lancaster was killed near the level crossing. Ever since, people say his ghost has been wandering around. Visitors walking along the old tracks have claimed they can see a man in old railway clothes pacing the rails or standing by the crossing, looking like he's checking the line, waiting for a train that will never come. Some say he disappears if you get too close, just vanishing into thin air. People have told stories of hearing the sound of a train whistle when no train is around, or seeing the flash of a lantern bobbing along the tracks in the middle of the night. The old station itself is falling apart. Rotten wood platforms, overgrown weeds, rusted signs, but the figure of Lancaster keeps appearing near the crossing, even among the weeds and debris. People exploring the site at dusk say there's usually this strange tension in the air, like someone's walking right behind them, only there never is. Trouble House Halt was a small station in Gloucestershire, England. It opened in 1959 and closed in 1964. The station was unique, and it was built specifically to serve the Trouble House Inn, a 17th century public house. The inn had a weird reputation. It was built on land prone to flooding, and locals called the area the Troubles because of strange things that kept happening there. Doors would slam on their own, windows rattled for no reason, and some would hear the sound of footsteps when the building was empty. The strangest stories came from the last day the station operated in 1964. The landlord and his brother built a coffin, and then they filled it with empty whiskey bottles, covered it with inscriptions. They loaded it onto the last train leaving Trouble House Halt, sending it to Richard Beeching in London, the man responsible for closing the line. Witnesses remember the scene being surreal. There were mourners in hats, the tiny platform was wobbling under the weight of everyone, and the coffin slowly moved down the tracks. Decades later, people walking near the old line will sometimes hear strange noises at night. Doors banging, boards creaking, and clattering of an oncoming train, even though it hasn't run in ages. Highgate Station in North London has been abandoned since 1970, but it's easily one of the creepiest spots on the old underground network. When it first opened in the 1860s, it was part of the Overground line before being absorbed into London's Underground. Plans to redevelop it fell apart, and the place was just left to rot. People who've been inside it, though, say it isn't just the decay that makes it eerie. See, for years, visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures moving along the platforms, usually after dark. Some describe a tall man in a trench coat who vanishes if you look directly at him. Others talk about hearing disembodied footsteps echoing through the tunnels, even though, again, trains haven't run there in decades. One of the most unsettling accounts comes from people walking near the entrance who swear they'll hear a woman screaming from deep inside the station. Anytime anyone's gone in to check, though, they've found the place completely empty. Marree railway station sits out in the remote northern parts of South Australia. The town was first surveyed in 1883, and by 1884, a rail line connected it to other towns. Back then, the station was a big deal. It helped move cattle, coal, and passengers all across the state. It was active for decades, but by the 80s, it was officially closed, leaving the old platforms and tracks behind. Even though the station isn't in use anymore, there are still a handful of abandoned trains. And then there's the haunted side. People visiting the station have reported hearing footsteps on empty platforms, strange noises that sound like trains chugging. Some even claim to see dark shadows inside the front cabin of one of the locomotives, shaped like a man, maybe a driver who never left the controls. And finally, we have Lower Bay subway station in Toronto. Bay Station is right in the middle of downtown and still very much active, a little too active if you ask me, but that's beside the point. What a lot of people don't realize is that directly beneath it is a hidden abandoned station called Lower Bay. This station was actually part of an experiment back in 1966. The idea was to make the subway system run more smoothly, but after just 6 months it was shut down because it didn't really work. Since then, though, Lower Bay hasn't gone completely unused. It's where new subway operators get trained, where trains get moved between the two active lines as well. Movie crews also love it because it's this perfectly eerie, empty underground space, but The real reason the station has a creepy reputation? The lady in red. People say she's the ghost of a woman who either jumped or was pushed in front of a train back when the station was still running. Workers have talked about eerie encounters with a woman wandering the tracks in red, looking completely lost. With all that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.